This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, thank you, clerk, for starting the recording. And if I could also, clerk, if you could please do the roll call.
Councilmember Fox,
Present.
Councilmember Kasberg,
Here.
Councilmember Boyle,
Present.
Councilmember Cerveny,
Present.
Councilmember Strobehn, Councilmember Strobehn, and
Okay.
Mayor Thornton.
Present. Okay, thank you, clerk. So, yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started. Bronson, I'll turn it over to you. And I would imagine that you would want council members to ask questions as you go through the presentation, or do you want to do it at the very end?
No, let's go ahead, and if people have questions as we're going through it, just go ahead and speak up and I'll take them as we go.
Very good. Thank you.
So I'm going to share my screen here and we'll go through a slide deck. There we go. So as Mayor indicated, tonight we're going to talk about council members and the mayor's roles and responsibilities. What your roles and responsibilities are depends on what type of city you are. There are different forms of municipal government, and you act in different capacities. The council acts in either a legislative or a quasi-judicial capacity, and the mayor acts in an administrative capacity and at times in a legislative capacity. So really the root of our whole discussion and responsibilities and roles being related to the form of government goes back to the Constitution, and it provides that the legislature, the state legislature is speaking to, shall provide for the incorporation and organization and classification of cities and towns. And the legislature has done that. There are first-class cities, which is a population over 10,000, and the legislature has statutes relating to first-class cities in the Chapter 35.22 of the Revised Code of Washington. Second-class cities have at least 1,500 people, and the statutes relating to second-class cities is found at Chapter 35.23. Code cities are what La Center is a code city. Title 35A of the Revised Code of Washington addresses code cities, and then last are towns, which are found in the statutes at 35.27. So essentially 4 classifications of cities. As I said, La Center is a code city. It is that code cities are referred to as an optional municipal code form of government, and the legislature provided for code cities in 1967. And code cities are by far the most common type of cities in Washington. Of the 281 cities in the state, 197 are code cities. And the advantage of being a code city is that the statutes confer very broad authority and powers on code cities. So code cities can either be charter or non-charter code cities, but to be a charter code city, you have to have a population of at least 10,000. And the process for forming a charter is that it's initiated by a resolution of the council or a 10% petition by the electors. The voters decide the question of whether or not to adopt a charter or not, and they elect charter commissioners to draft the charter. And then there's a vote on the charter itself after it's been drafted. So in the code city, form of government, we have different plans of government. There's a mayor council plan of government. That's 35A.12. That's what the city of La Center, we're a mayor council form of government. It's sometimes referred to as a strong mayor form of government. There's also the council manager form of government. That's sometimes referred to as a strong council form of government. And then there's a retained commission form of government, excuse me, which at this time there's no commission code cities. But which form of government, whether you're mayor, council, or council manager, does have an impact on what the roles of the mayor and the council members are. So in the council manager form of government, and as an example, the city of Vancouver is a council manager form of government, as is Washougal and Camas. In 2018, the voters approved changing to a council manager form of government. In that form of government, all the legislative and policy making powers are vested in the city council. And then the council employs a professionally trained public administrator or city manager to carry out the policies that the council develops. Again, in the council manager form of government, the mayor's responsibilities are primarily to preside at the council meetings and act as the head of the city for ceremonial purposes. And then the mayor votes as a council member and does not have any veto power. The commission form of government, I'm not going to spend much time on that because it's right now there aren't any, but it's like the Portland form of government where the commissioners or councilors each have certain departments of the city that they're responsible for overseeing. And the mayor has essentially the same powers as other members of the commission with no veto power. So let's talk about the form of government that La Center is, the mayor council form of government or the strong mayor form of government. In this form of government, the mayor is the chief executive and administrative officer of the city. The council serves as the city's legislative body. The council formulates policies, and the mayor's job is to carry out those policies through the administration of the city government. The mayor attends and presides over council meetings, but does not vote except in the case of a tie in certain situations. So the mayor and the council, they need to work as a team. It's a team process. Nothing can be accomplished entirely by the council and nothing can be accomplished entirely by the mayor. The best progress happens when everyone's involved and takes the time to listen to one another. Every perspective of each council member or the mayor is a partial view or perspective, and all have some truth, but it takes the collective perspective and view of everybody to formulate an entire picture or policy. And there's a African proverb that I like, and I think it applies to government and the interrelationships of a mayor or council or city manager. And that is, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So to avoid conflict, it's essential that the mayor and the council members understand each of their roles and how they relate to each other and how they relate to staff. Many conflicts in cities or counties happen when there's role confusion and people overstep the boundaries of their respective roles. So speaking generally, the council authority is, like I said, it's the council's role to adopt policies for the city and the mayor's role to administer and carry out the policies. The council, being a legislative body, You are who have the authority to enact laws and policies so long as they're consistent with state law. It's usually done through the enactment of ordinances or resolutions. And going into more detail, what the city's council authority is addressed in two statutes, RCW 35A.2012.190, which refers you to RCW 35A.11, and the details laid out in 35A.11.020. So your job is to enact the city budget. It's probably one of your most important jobs. To enact ordinances to protect public health, safety, and welfare, to define the powers and functions and duties of city officers and employees. You fix the compensation of officers and employees as part of the budget adoption process. You establish the working conditions of officers and employees. You enter into the contracts. That's why on our consent agenda, we bring contracts forward to you for your approval. You impose taxes so long as you're authorized to impose the tax by state law. When it comes to the regulation or the acquisition and disposition of real property, that's your responsibility. You provide for governmental, recreational, educational, cultural, and social services. You can cause the city to operate utilities. You approve the claims. Again, that's a recurring agenda item that you have on every agenda. You have the authority to grant franchises for the use of public ways and to provide for licensing of businesses for the purposes of revenue generation or regulation of businesses. The mayor, on the other hand, he serves in general as the chief executive administrative officer of the city. He's in charge of carrying out the council policies. He is basically in charge of the day-to-day operation of the city, including the supervision of appointed officials and employees. He oversees the hiring, firing, and supervision of all the city officers and employees. So the detail of the mayor's authority is set out in the two statutes, RCW 35A.12.090 and 100. So like I said, he's the chief executive and administrative officer. He's in charge of all the departments and employees of the city. While the council approves contracts, it's the mayor who enforces the contracts. The mayor has the authority to initiate or bring lawsuits with the council's concurrence or consent. He presides over the council meeting. In certain situations, he can exercise tie-breaking authority on council votes. He has the veto authority over ordinances. Council can override the veto by a vote of 4 council members. The mayor can call special meetings. He prepares a proposed budget for the council's consideration, and the council decides the budget to adopt. It's the mayor's responsibility to report to the council on the financial and other affairs and needs of the city, and to make recommendations to the council regarding how those needs should be addressed. And then the council acts on those recommendations, and the mayor performs as the ceremonial head of the city.
Hey Bronson, this is Sean Boyle. I just had a question. Whose job is it to oversee the consultants or self-contractors?
That would be part of the administrative duties of the mayor. So you approve the contracts for those consultants, but then once the contract's in place, it's the mayor's duty to enforce the contracts and to supervise the consultants. So where we most commonly see conflicts arising between the mayor and the council, and this is not just in the case of La Center, but it's in the case of all cities and counties. It occurs when issues relating to personnel and performance, so supervision of employees, consultants, officers. It occurs with hiring and firing, contract administration and enforcement, and sometimes budget, although I would say budget is less common because there the roles are pretty clearly defined, where the mayor recommends a budget, the council adopts it, and then in the administration, it falls to the mayor to ensure that the city operates within the budget. So switching subjects just for a second, let's talk about liability concerns for council members and the mayor. We do in Washington have what is called legislative immunity. And so an elected official who is performing a discretionary function or making a discretionary decision within his or her official capacity is immune from suit for the decisions that he or she makes that are in that discretionary decision-making authority. So again, to be immune, it has to be a discretionary action and one that is within your official capacity to undertake. Where we have seen liability fall on cities is in cases where someone acts outside of their official capacity. And so in the case of Mission Springs versus the city of Spokane, a building permit had been issued, but the city council directed staff to hold up the issuance of grading permits for a 790 unit apartment building because there was citizen opposition to the development. And the city attorney advised the council that the issuance of the grading permit is an administrative action, not a policy or a legislative matter that the council has the authority over, and that it wasn't within the council's authority to delay the permit issuance. In this case, the council member said, well, we've got the opportunity to put a stop to this, and let's just see what happens. Let's see how confident they are, and if they bring a lawsuit, we can always turn around and issue the permit. That's an option that we'll still have available to us. Well, here the court held that the city council members were acting in excess of their lawful authority. So they were meddling in the administrative affairs of the city with respect to the issuance of a grading permit. The motion passed by council was not legislative, it was not policy making, it was administrative, and therefore no legislative immunity applied. And the city was ordered to pay the developer $250,000, but as often is the case, the cost of attorney's fees in defending the case ran $1.2 million. So the point is, if council acts outside of its legislative or policy-making authority and starts acting on administrative matters, you're not going to have legislative authority. The city's not going to have legislative authority, and you'll be subject to lawsuits and have to pay damages. So let's talk about kinds of decisions where legislative immunity might apply or might not apply. So would the legislative immunity apply to a decision to not include the cost of a road repair in the budget? Anybody want to take a guess on that? So what kind of an action is budget adoption? Is that something that council does? Well, we know it is. And so legislative immunity does apply to decisions as to what include in a budget or what not to include in a budget. Does legislative immunity apply to approving a building permit or not, or directing an official to approve a permit or not? No, that was just the case that we reviewed in Mission Springs versus the city of Spokane? Would it apply to a decision to rezone an area of the city? The answer is yes. That is clearly a legislative action that the council takes and is subject to legislative immunity. But would it apply to telling a landowner what use they could make of their specific parcel of property? The answer is no, it doesn't. That is not a legislative action. That's an administrative action, and there isn't legislative immunity for a council member taking that kind of an action. Any questions on this? Okay. So what's covered by insurance? We have insurance through the risk management services of the Association of Washington Cities, and their policy covers covered parties. That's the term that's used, and the term covered party is defined to include officials who are acting in the course and scope of their official duties. So again, with respect to council members, those duties are the legislative policy-making duties. And if you're acting outside of those duties and acting in an administrative capacity, such as the Mission Springs case and saying, let's hold up on issuing a permit, not only are you subject or do you lose legislative immunity, but you could lose your coverage under your insurance because those acts aren't within the scope of your official duties. I mentioned that council acts in a quasi-judicial role. Examples of this would be when you do a rezone on a site-specific basis, so for a specific property, or when you hear appeals from hearing examiner decisions, usually would be involving subdivision approval or approval of conditional use permits. There you can act as an appellate body to review the decision of the hearing examiner. And that is what we would say is acting in a quasi-judicial role. What's not quasi-judicial is when you do comprehensive plan amendments or adoptions, when you do area-wide zoning ordinances or area-wide zoning amendments. Those are not quasi-judicial actions. And what's significant about acting in a quasi-judicial capacity is now you're acting like a judge. And we have what's called the appearance of fairness doctrine that applies to your actions when you're acting as a quasi-judicial body. And the appearance of fairness doctrine was originally established by judicial decisions, but in 1982, the legislature adopted RCW 42.36, which is the appearance of fairness doctrine today. And what it prohibits is when you're acting in this capacity, there cannot be bias, there cannot be prejudice, and there can't be prejudgment. It requires fairness in both fact and in appearance. So let's, some of the examples of where there's potential bias would be if you stand to gain financially from a decision, if you own property in an area that is affected by the decision, if you're employed by an interested party. Sometimes associational or membership ties can raise an issue of bias. It's not a given that there's bias. It would depend on the particular facts of the membership or association and how closely you are tied, how big is the organization, and having family or social relationship with people who could be affected by the decision can raise a question of whether or not there's bias. So the test that a court will apply if there's a challenge under the appearance of fairness doctrine will be the court's going to look to the decision that was made and how was it made, and whether or not the decision was based solely on the matters of the record that was before you. So your decision in a quasi-judicial matter is limited to the record that was established at the hearing examiner proceeding. And so that record, all the testimony, all the documents are certified and submitted to you, and then you consider that evidence and nothing else. The question comes down to whether or not a fair-minded person observing the council proceeding would be able to conclude that everybody was heard who should have been heard, and did you give reasonable faith and credit to the matters that were presented according to the weight and force that they were entitled to receive. One of the issues that comes up when you're acting in a quasi-judicial matter is whether or not you had ex parte contact. And by ex parte contact, I mean whether or not you were contacted by someone outside of the quasi-judicial proceeding. So if someone comes up to you and wants to talk to you about an appeal of a subdivision approval or appeal of a conditional use permit, that contact, if there was discussion between you and the person who wants to talk to you, that is what we call an ex parte contact. And during the pendency of a quasi-judicial matter, there is to be no ex parte contact. If there is, it's your obligation to place the substance of the contact on the record during your consideration of the appeal, and to announce the right of parties to the appeal to rebut the substance of the communication. Just as an aside, prior participation as a planning commission member doesn't preclude participation as a council member in a quasi-judicial manner. So if there's ex parte contact and you put the substance of the contact on the record and you give parties an opportunity to rebut or respond to that contact or that information, a person who wants to make a claim of a violation of appearance of fairness, they have to make that claim during the proceeding. And if they don't do so, they lose their right to challenge on the basis of an appearance of fairness. So what can happen when we don't act within our authority, or we consider matters that are outside the record of a quasi-judicial proceeding? Again, the party who is applying, in the case of Burien, a developer applied for the development of a 216 unit residential complex. Burien was newly incorporated when this came up. There was citizen opposition to the development proposal. The city delayed the project. The city council approved a settlement with the developer, but then the city council violated the settlement agreement. They backed out of it, saying that there was an Open Public Meeting Act violation. The developer sued for the delay of the project and was awarded a $10.5 million verdict. In the case of SeaTac, there the city was slapped with an $18.3 million judgment. That case involved owners, and actually the owner of the property was also the founder of the Red Robin restaurant chain. They owned a piece of property in SeaTac. They wanted to develop a park and ride that would serve the SeaTac airport. The city was opposed to the development of that park and ride because the city owned a parcel nearby and the city planned to develop their own park and ride. The mayor wanted the development to be developed into condos instead of a park and ride. And the mayor's reasoning for that was that he wanted to raise property values because he thought it would price Somalis out of his neighborhood. The city's ended up adopting a moratorium on the developer's park and ride parcel. They delayed the project. The owners of the parcel who wanted to develop the park and ride, they ended up, because of the delay, defaulting on their loan to a bank. And they brought a suit against the city for the delay of the project, which caused them to go into default on their loan. And they got an $18.3 million judgment against the city. Not only are there financial consequences of violating the processes for acting in a quasi-judicial capacity or acting outside of your authorized roles, but there's also embarrassment and loss of stature in the public perception. And in the case of Maranatha Mining versus Pierce County, the court really lambasted the county council for how they handled a appeal of a mining permit. And the court said that it was apparent that the council gave little consideration to the merits of the appeal. They disregarded the facts, and instead they acted on citizen complaints and comments of one of its own members and basically disregarded the record that was established at the hearing examiner level. The court said that they couldn't escape the conclusion that the council's decision was based on community displeasure and not on reasons backed by policies and standards as the law required. So Maranatha was allowed to pursue with its claim for damages against Pierce County. So what I'd like to conclude with is, I know it's your desire to do what you feel is in the best interest of the city, but you can't do whatever you like to address concerns. You have authorized roles that are defined by law, and they're limited. So there's clear statutes on the role of council to act as a legislative body, the role of the mayor to act as the chief executive and administrative officer. And so if you respect those roles and respect your respective authorities, you'll do fine. Like I say, stick to your roles, stay in your lane, work together as a team, and you'll go far. So are there any questions? Not a single question, huh?
You covered it well, Bronson.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention. We've got a little extra time, so.
Yep. Thank you very much, Bronson. Yeah, great presentation. You covered a lot of material. Are you going to provide the council members with your slide deck here after the meeting, or?
Let's see, Deputy Clerk, can you unshare my screen? And I believe it, if it's not part. So Christina, do you know if this slide deck is on the city website or not?
We can get it on there.
Okay, I can also email it to everybody. That would not be a problem.
Yeah,
And
I think that-
I'd point out, there's a information on this roles and responsibilities also on the MRSC website, just mrsc.org. And in the search window, I think if you just type in roles, it will give you links to information that they have as well. But sure, I'll shoot out an email with this attached to it.
Very good, thank you. And then before we adjourn, I would like to ask the council members again if they have completed the AWC training for newly elected officials. So again, if I could just real quick, Councilmember Boyle, have you taken that training?
I have not yet, but I plan to do it soon.
Okay, Councilmember Fox.
Yeah, I haven't done it either. I've been busy moving my business, so I hope to do it in the next month.
Okay, and I know Councilmember Kasberg has taken the course, so yeah, I would definitely encourage you to take that course. It covers the material that Bronson presented this evening.
If Maria could just send an email about some info, that would just be helpful to get the ball rolling. If I have to send an email to ask a question about it, it's just going to delay it. I mean, so just send some email, give us the notice about when the next training is so we can put it on our calendar.
Okay, very good.
Will do.
Okay, so again, thank you, Bronson, for your presentation. Thank you, council, and all the guests that were on here this evening as well. It was great to see so many people. So it's right now 6:06. Clerk, would be best if we just closed out of the meeting right now and started over again at 6:30. Should we leave our screens open?
No,
or?
please don't close out. We will just stop the recording right now.
Yep, if we start the recording, this will adjourn this meeting.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, February 9th, 2022, and I'd like to call this evening's City Council meeting to order. I do see we have quite a few guests on this evening, so I want to welcome everyone to this meeting tonight, and I'm happy to see that so many people are calling in tonight. So it's great to see all the visitors. If we could please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, could I get the roll call?
Councilmember Fox,
Present.
Councilmember Kasberg,
Here.
Councilmember Boyle,
Present.
Councilmember Strobehn.
Here.
Councilmember Cerveny,
Present.
Mayor Thornton.
Present. Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. If there are no requests for any items to be removed, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Did I get a second? It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Kasberg, Councilmember Kasberg, Councilmember Boyle,
Yes.
Councilmember Strobehn,
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda are citizen comments. Clerk, do we have any comments this evening?
We do. We have 4, Mayor.
Would you please read them?
First comment from Dennis Hill, 1316 West Alder Place. Greetings, Mayor, City Council, and La Center citizens. On January 26th, I listened in on the City Council workshop regarding the Clark County Sheriff's Office. I think Chief Richardson had a great PowerPoint presentation, and he and Jeff Swanson did a great job facilitating the workshop. I was also most impressed that the Clark County Sheriff Chuck Atkins made time to attend the virtual workshop. He spoke very clearly that he and the entire Sheriff's Department were committed to helping La Center regarding providing an on-site police presence. He and Chief Deputy John Horch did say it may be a while until a formal contract could be worked out, but they both supported making this happen. The Sheriff's Department, like every other city and county in Washington and across the country, are having difficulty finding and hiring qualified recruits, but Chief Deputy Horch said that this will change and hopefully soon. I am very thankful that we have a great working relationship with the Clark County Sheriff and his staff. I know they will do their best to support La Center's desire to have a reliable, sustainable, and affordable police presence for our city and its citizens. I want to continue to encourage the mayor and city council to seek solutions that will allow us to have open in-person city council meetings. I believe the citizens of La Center truly want this. Please make this a high priority item on your agenda for 2022. Are there plans to have a ribbon cutting and an open house celebration for our new city hall? I am sure the public would like to see this new city facility firsthand. I would like to know where the city stands in getting the word out to prospective developers, builders, and investors about the available land and business opportunities at the La Center Junction. I know the city does not own any property at the junction, but doing some type of advertising to try and attract developers and builders to look at what's available, I believe would justify spending a little money. I believe in the long run, this will be the area that La Center will be able to generate the amount of revenue we need to reverse our deficit spending. Thank you and be safe. Respectfully submitted, Dennis Hill. Second citizen comment, Nelda Perryman, 824 East. Yes.
Excuse me, Clerk, is it possible to put these comments up on the screen while you read them?
Yes,
Yeah, if you could please do that.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the first comment. I'm going to go to the next one. Okay. Nelda Perryman, 824 East Pioneer Street, Mayor and Council and citizens. At the work session held February 2nd, the topic of police coverage was discussed once again. Even though no vote or ordinance was voted upon regarding a council member accompanying Richardson when he speaks with the tribe and Woodland PD. 4 out of the 5 council members voiced their desire for this to happen, and yet the mayor said no. How is that possible in a majority rule situation? The mayor can veto any bill the council passes, but the council can override the veto with a majority +1. So the council members that were in favor, plus the council member that brought it up, was in favor equally, the 3+1, and that makes a majority that is needed to override a veto by the mayor. The mayor and Richardson's reluctance to include a council member in these talks is baffling. Thank you. Next comment, Marty Larsh, 1505 East Heitman Avenue, Mayor, Council, and citizens. I have been listening to the last couple of work sessions, and Chief Richardson's reports are constantly about what we cannot do and downplaying the crime in La Center and the area. He keeps talking about the CCSO. John Horch has made it clear the Sheriff's Department cannot enter into a contract with La Center for at least 2 years. And he has given all the reasons as to why we cannot start our police department again. He got very emotional when 2 of our council members approached the Cowlitz tribe and the Woodland PD to talk about solutions. When Councilmember Boyle said he met with Dave Barnett, both the mayor and the chief got visibly upset. The chief was very disrespectful towards the tribe, which if found out could jeopardize our chances of any cooperation with them. They wrote a $100,000 check specifically for the La Center PD, and in the Reflector this week, they contributed $90,000 to our La Center Middle School Tech Department. I feel we need to send Councilmember Kasberg with Councilmember Boyle to meet with Dave Barnett Councilmember Kasberg should go with the Councilmember Fox to the Woodland PD meeting. As one of our new council members said in the last work session, let's not dwell on the past and move forward. Have the future work sessions about what we can do. Thank you. Last comment, we have public comment from Sally Alcazan, 1000 East Heritage Loop, La Center. It is with dismay that I listened to the most recent city council workshop. In particular, I don't understand why the presence of a city council member in a proposed meeting with Woodland PD and/or ALNA police is not encouraged. Rather, it is discouraged and fairly well beat down by the mayor and interim chief Richardson. A majority of the city council members think that would be beneficial, and I agree with them. Many of us voted for particular new city council members because they campaigned on a promise of fixing our currently broken police situation. Yet they are being told to sit back and not participate in what could be a critical meeting. Please don't repeat the excuses you gave at the workshop. The desire for our current city council members to participate should outweigh your opinions about this topic. Sally Alcazan. And that's the end of the public comments.
You're muted, Mayor.
That's the end of the public comments.
Thank you, Clerk. I'm sorry I was muted. Appreciate it, Councilmember Strobehn.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, I would like to give Chief Richardson the opportunity to respond to the last 3 emails. Chief, are you prepared to give a response to the last 3 emails received? One from Alcazan, Nelda Perryman, and Marty Larsch.
I'm sorry, Mayor, but I thought we weren't to respond to comments. This is coming from a time when I actually asked for an email and was told not to do that as well. So I'm a little baffled here by this sudden change.
Well, typically, you know, I mean, these emails are coming in. Chief Richardson we've talked about this. He's prepared to give a response. Typically, we don't give responses right away because it takes staff sometimes to address the response. In regard to Dennis Hill's earlier comments, we will address that at a future date, especially with regard to development at the junction and some of the other things you brought up. But again, these 3 comments, especially in light of the work session we just had regarding roles and responsibilities, Council Strobehn, I think it's timely that we address it right up front. So if you would please go ahead, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I can. Obviously, I can respond in general to all of the comments. Many of these comments have already been posted on the La Center Concerned Citizens Facebook page. In the past, when they're posted there, I've reached out to the administrator to try to have them correct misinformation, and you don't get a response. And what I've witnessed over the years is if you try to respond back to somebody's comments or a Facebook posting, in this culture of canceling everybody out, you generally get insults back, more misinformation, and it turns into this long circle of response, and then counter response. So with that being said, let's talk about really quickly crime in La Center and the allegation that I've downplayed it, and that's absolutely false. I report every crime every month through my reports. All the data either came from Danny when she was the records clerk, or they come from Clark County. I have no input on what kind of crimes get reported. Everything goes to the state, and then I pull it out of a state database. If you look at the end of the year report, and what I've said all along, all year, is that crimes against property are up, as they have been all over the state of Washington. If you look at the stats from the state of Washington since October, auto thefts are up 50%. And so are thefts from vehicles. So that's not a problem that's unique to La Center, but they're up. And I also have stated through the entire year that crimes against persons are down. And if you look at my year-end report, you will notice that that's exactly what happened. That not only is crime down overall in this crimes, actually reported crimes were less in 2021 than they were in 2020, total crimes. even when you account for drug arrests, which we had to change the way we did enforcement. So the crime is what it is, and people can get online, they can get on the public databases, and they can look at it for themselves. I've never downplayed crime. In fact, I've told you that, you know, this is something that we are working on. I've told you when we made arrests. I believe we haven't had an auto theft since December 2nd. And as far as theft from vehicle, other than this weekend, I don't believe we had a theft from vehicle since the end of either October or November. So now we've had, I know we had 3 over the last 3 days, 3 or 4. So again, I don't downplay crime. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of the previous reports from the previous police chief, they're actually probably kind of the opposite, where they go into talking about how calls for service are up and we need more staffing. But if you actually have drilled down and looked at the calls for service, the calls for service were generally vacation house check increases and patrol emphasis, which drove our total call load up. So with that, I'll move on to some other things. As far as being disrespectful for the tribe, I'm going to just read what I wrote to somebody that just made a recent post on the Facebook page, and I'm going to start at the 3rd paragraph because of time. And I'm going to start with, first, regarding your comment, since when does a police chief who is a consultant represent our city over a council member? I am the police chief for the city of La Center, and I represent the police department in all meetings regarding police operations. My position is required under RCW, and I take my direction from the mayor, who is the chief executive officer of the city of La Center. Per the RCW, the mayor is the chief executive and administrative officer of the city, in charge of all departments and all employees, with the authority to designate assistants and department heads. The mayor is required by law to see that all laws and ordinances are faithfully enforced, that law and order is maintained in the city, and shall have general supervision of the administration of city government and all city interests. This includes the police department. So let's talk about another comment, because this is kind of what their comments are, and it's the same thing I've addressed over and over. This is specifically one of them. In January, Councilmember Boyle asked the question, have we ever talked to Woodland PD or the tribal police regarding potential involvement in police coverage for La Center? The answer was no, we have not. Subsequently, this new council member took it upon himself to contact the tribal police and receive a positive reply. He shared this information with the council. Well, this is a false statement and is in direct conflict with what I've stated in numerous council meetings and workshops over the last year. Councilmember Boyle stated that he had met with the tribal chairman and the chief operations officer during his campaign, and they expressed interest in helping the city of La Center with our policing needs. As I have stated in various public meetings, I met with Tribal Chief John Pound on December 9th, 2021, regarding a contract with the city of La Center for policing services. Chief Pound stated that the tribe was not interested in a police contract for various reasons. My meeting with Chief Pound was after the campaign for city council and most likely after the meeting that Councilmember Boyle had with the tribal chairman. After Councilmember Boyle's comments, I reached out to Chief Pound the next day to clarify the conflicting information. Chief Pound told me that he had just met with the tribal chairman and they were now interested in exploring a possible law enforcement contract with the city of La Center. I subsequently met with Chief Pound on February 3rd, 2022, and I have another meeting scheduled for March of 2022. I have been consistent and cautious regarding any law enforcement agreement with the Cowlitz Tribal Police. There have been incidents in the state of Washington where tribal governments have not honored their legal agreements with municipal law enforcement agencies. This is not the Cowlitz tribe, but it was another tribe involved. There have also been past advice from our insurance pool, as well as other insurance pools in the state of Washington, not to sign agreements since the tribe is a sovereign nation and municipal governments cannot easily seek redress in our court system for a breach of contract terms. This is specifically concerning in police liability situations where damages, injuries, and misconduct can result in million-dollar claims against local government, where our insurance pool may not cover damages. While this is a concern, it may be overcome with discussions with our insurance provider and ensure that any agreement we sign has protections for the city of La Center, our assets, and the taxpayer. One of those options is for the tribe to take out an insurance policy for whatever minimums our insurance carrier says we should, so that, remember, if we get a tribal officer is working in the city of La Center on our behalf, and we've deputized them to do that, we have liability for that unless the tribe waives sovereign immunity and gets an insurance policy and agrees to pass that liability from us and the La Center taxpayers onto the tribe. So that's what my concern was, and that's the concern that the insurance carriers have. And that's, if you look, there is an action a couple of years ago where a city was booking into a tribal jail and refused medical attention on an inmate, and the inmate died. And in the contract, the tribe was supposed to have all liability for any deaths in the jail, and they ultimately said, no, we're not going to have it in this case. So what happened with the city is they had to settle their half for about $350,000, and the tribe's settlement is confidential because the tribe does not have to work under public records laws. So with that in place, let's talk about Woodland. So I met the Woodland Police Chief, Jim Kelly, at a Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs conference during the week of November 15th, and had a discussion concerning the Woodland Police Department providing law enforcement services to the city of La Center. This meeting was witnessed by two other law enforcement officials from the Clark County Sheriff's Department. I had a follow-up meeting with Chief Kelly on January 27th of 2022 to identify operational issues as well as other considerations. While the Woodland Police Department could provide law enforcement services, they are also suffering from two vacant positions. And they also have difficulty recruiting additional police officers that they would need for the city of La Center. Remember that any contract that we do with any agency, anybody, any of our partners, Woodland, the tribal police, Ridgefield, or Clark County, requires them to add additional bodies. They have to actually go out and hire additional personnel to cover the city. They don't have them already on staff. And another thing, the greatest obstacle with working with Woodland is they operate predominantly in Cowicks County within a completely different communications and record system that is not compatible with the communications and record systems utilized in Clark County. It's important to remember that a Woodland police unit providing services in the city of La Center would have to respond to calls in two different counties and assist units from various police agencies working off different communications and record systems. So with that being said, I reached out to county IT to see if it was possible to have one computer in their car running multiple operation systems from two different counties, and they said no. The only way you could make that work is you'd have to have two devices in each car. So that is an operational consideration that we have to look at. That doesn't mean that it can't be overcome, but it is going to be cumbersome. And finally, another comment that's very kind of in the same line of what you're hearing tonight. Richardson stated that he would be contacting them, and we're talking about the tribe. However, when it was suggested that one of the city council members accompany Richardson, it was met with an immediate resistance from both the mayor and Richardson. And I think somebody actually said that I was hostile or something like that. But let me talk really briefly about that. This is another false statement. And what I told the city council, and I went back and listened to my comments. And I told the city council that I should have a meeting with the tribal chief first, John Pound, to discuss police operational details. In other words, is it possible? What's the timeline of recruitment? How fast can you recruit? How would we define the patrol area? What kind of cars would we have? The basic nuts and bolts of providing services. I stated that it would not be appropriate to bring a council member to a meeting to discuss operational details with chief from the tribe without having members of their tribal council also present. That is protocol. You know, and in fact, I even ran it by John Pound when I met with him, and he said, yes, that our meeting should be us one-on-one. And I also told the city council that once Chief Pound and I had a framework established regarding operational details, that's when it would be appropriate for the mayor and whoever the mayor designates to meet and engage in meetings with the tribe and the tribal council to work out policy decisions. If we review the record of the meeting, there was not an immediate resistance, only advice to new council members on how to appropriately engage in the process. As I have stated in numerous public meetings, I am open to meeting anyone in the community to discuss police department assessment and the challenges facing small police departments in the era of police reform legislation, funding, staffing, and retention. In closing, while I can't control misinformation on social media or respond to every misstatement, I'm dedicated to working on a contract that provides law enforcement services to the citizens of the center within current budget limitations. Mayor, is there anything else you want me to comment on?
No, I think that pretty much covers it, Chief. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think you did a good job covering what needed to be covered. And I'd also like to ask the city attorney, Bronson, in light of the work session that we had earlier this evening in the context of these public comments that we have, do you have any comments that you can share with the council that would tie back to the work session we had on roles and responsibilities earlier this evening?
I do. The public comments that were made that suggest what process should be followed for exploring how police services might be provided to the center, and suggesting that council members be involved in the discussions with the tribe or with the city of Woodland. It is kind of fortuitous that those comments are made on a night where we just had a work session going over the roles and responsibilities of the council and the mayor. So there is a statute that addresses the process for identifying the city's needs and identifying how those needs might be met and acting on those needs. The statute is RCW 35A.12.100, and that's rather long statute on the authority of the mayor, but there's one sentence in that statute that I'd like to quote, and it says, "He or she," referring to the mayor, "shall report to the council concerning the affairs of the city and its financial and other needs, and shall make recommendations for council consideration and action." So police services is obviously one of the city's needs, and it's the responsibility of the mayor to report to the council on those needs and to make a recommendation to council how those needs might be addressed. And then it's the council's responsibility to consider the recommendations and to take action. So in order to report to the council, in order to make recommendations, it's obvious that the mayor has to gather information and explore operations, to explore options on what to recommend to council. And how the mayor goes about gathering that information is up to him. That process of gathering information and forming recommendations is not subject to council direction or vote. It's within the mayor's prerogative.
Okay, Bronson, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Again, it was rather timely that we had the work session we had earlier as it relates to these this evening's public comments from 3 different individuals, because it's all fresh and in front of us tonight. I think now is the best time to address it. So go ahead.
Mr. Potter, so you were just saying that in the mayor's duties to make the recommendation and give the direction of what he thinks is best when addressing, you know, major topics. But are you saying that as council, we're not allowed to offer suggestions outside of that peer review, and we basically just vote on that suggestion as yay or nay, and we are not allowed to offer suggestions outside of that point of view? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, it's not what I said.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. No, that's not what you're saying. But you,
I said, no, that is not what I said. And there's nothing to preclude you from making a suggestion to the mayor that he can consider in making his recommendations.
okay, so we are allowed to make recommendations, not just focus on the one thing that's brought to us and vote on it, yes or no. We are allowed to go outside that scope.
Well, again, you asked if you could make suggestions, and I said, yes, you could. I was assuming you were saying making suggestions to the mayor so that he could consider them and reporting to the council and making recommendations. When the matter comes before the council, you can take any action that you feel is appropriate. You can say, yes, I like the recommendation, or no, I don't, or I have these suggestions, or would you consider X, Y, or Z? So it's not just a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay. Great. I just wanted to clarify that our suggestion about Clark, you know, pairing together with Woodland or looking at the tribal, you know, that's our, you know, our recommendation, because we've only been presented with, you know, only partnerships with Clark County, which we want to look at other options. So I just want to make sure that we're okay with suggesting these options and exploring them.
Yes, but I want to go back to, you know, the roles and staying within your respective roles. And I think that if what's being suggested in these public comments is council members going out and talking to other agencies is different than what I'm suggesting is appropriate for council members to do in making suggestions to the mayor or acting on recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Bronson. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Fox?
Yes, I guess what you're saying is we're allowed to make recommendations and explore outside options. We just need to do it within our meetings and in the right way, is what you're saying.
Yes, or one-on-one with the mayor if you wish, you know, those would be appropriate manners of making suggestions or giving input on a matter.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bronson. Now that we're discussing this topic, again, in light of the work session we had earlier, are there any other questions by council members this evening regarding these topics? Okay. Okay, again, thank you, Chief. Appreciate your input. Thank you, Bronson. We'll go ahead and conclude the citizen public comment section for this evening's meeting and move on. Next is the mayor's report. I do have a couple of things for the council this evening. First of all, I just want to mention that city offices will be closed on Monday, February 21st in observance of President's Day. I also want to mention that the city has been moving into the new city hall. We've moved everyone from the city hall into the new city hall, as well as all the employees that were at the Public Works building. They are all now in the new city hall. It's great to have everybody under one roof. Everything has been moved in. It's going to take a little while for city staff to get things organized and get to a point where it's a little bit more presentable. So after that is done, the city will definitely be having a open house and grand opening that will be announced at a later date after we get some time to pull everything together. And I just want to say that it's great to be into that building. It's really going to, I think, improve the operations of the city greatly, and even the contractors that are coming in, and citizens are commenting how much easier it's going to be to deal with the city now that everybody's under one roof. So it's pretty exciting. And I encourage the city council members to come by and take a look at it. I'd also like to visit with the council just a little bit about setting up our next work session. When we visited last and talked about this, it was pretty much agreed by the council that we can schedule work sessions prior to a city council meeting on the second and fourth Wednesday of a month, like we did this evening. That limits us to a 1 hour, basically a 1 hour presentation. There are some other work sessions that we need to schedule that would take longer than an hour. I would like to propose that we schedule those on a Wednesday when we're not having city council meetings. And so that would be the first and third Wednesday of the month. And I would like to ask the council this evening their availability for a work session on either Wednesday, March 2nd, which is the Wednesday, first Wednesday in March, or March 16th, the third Wednesday in March. And again, I'd like to just go through and ask the council members if they're available. Councilmember Fox, are you available for either one of those days?
I am available, but not until 6:30. And
6:30? Okay. Councilmember Kasberg?
Yes, I'm available both of those Wednesdays.
And Councilmember Boyle?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Strobehn?
Mayor, with the mask mandates maybe coming to an end, is there a chance that we can take a Saturday and have a work session in person instead? Because we're planning out a few weeks in advance now.
Okay, so yes, we can look at that, but right now I'm seeing if I'm querying everybody if they're available for those 2 dates. Councilmember Strobehn, are you available?
What was the dates again, please?
Wednesday, March 2nd or Wednesday, March 16th?
I am available both those Wednesdays.
Okay. Councilmember Cerveny?
I'm available both those dates.
Okay, thank you. So to answer Councilmember Strobehn's question, Council, are you available on, we'll just use the month of March for a city council retreat and work session. So March, the Saturdays are March 5th, 12th, 19th, and 26th. Again, I'll go through the list. Councilmember Fox, would any of those Saturdays work for you?
I mean, I do prefer to do it on the subsequent Wednesdays, but if we had to do it on this, you're saying instead of doing those Wednesdays, put it together on one Saturday?
I'm just checking on availability. We'll see how we end up here, and then we'll leave it up to city to try to get things scheduled. Again, these meetings require guests and people to come in. You know, we have a legislative agenda that we need to address, and we'd like to invite our District 18 legislators. So again, there's a lot of moving parts in these things. I'm just checking on your availability right now.
Okay, the 5th and the 19th work best for me.
Okay. Councilmember Kasberg, any Saturdays in March work for you?
I am available all of the Saturdays in March.
All of them?
Yes.
Very good. Councilmember Boyle?
As far as I know right now, I'm only available the 19th and possibly the 26th.
Okay, so we'll put you down on the 19th. Councilmember Strobehn?
The 19th only.
The 19th only. And Councilmember Cerveny?
I can juggle whatever we need to.
Hi,
Okay.
guys. Hi, come here. Hey, sorry, I'm in a meeting, but come here quick. Give me a hug. Give me a kiss.
Okay, so
Soccer.
it looks like the 19th would be an option. March 19th would be an option for a meeting as well. So we will look at the feasibility of doing that as well, council. Again, I would hope that we could have an in-person meeting by the 19th. Right now, I can't say definitively that that's going to be the case. Just real quick, if by chance we cannot do a in-person meeting, would the council be willing to do a virtual meeting on a Saturday? Or do you want to wait until we actually can do one in person? And again, I'm just going to go through the list. Councilmember Fox, does it have to be in person on a Saturday?
Yeah, I prefer in person for sure.
Okay. Councilmember Kasberg?
I would prefer the in-person, but I also think we have enough work to do that we need to get together however we can.
Councilmember Boyle?
I concur with Councilmember Kasberg. I would be willing to do either, but in person is preferred.
Okay, Councilmember Strobehn.
I agree with both of the last two comments.
So either or, so we could do it, okay. Councilmember Cerveny.
Whatever works for everybody.
Okay, perfect. So it looks like the 19th, we can look into feasibility of having a retreat work session on that evening. So hopefully the city staff was able to catch that. We have the Wednesdays as an option as well as the 19th of March, which is a Saturday. Okay, something scheduled. Thank you, council. Let's see here. Okay. So the other item I had then this evening, and if the clerk could please pull up the list of consultants that the city is currently using. At one of our previous meetings, City Council indicated that they would like to see a list of consultants that the city is using to review contracts. So the list is in front of you. So if you could, council, if you could please identify which contracts you want to take a look at. We can make those available at a future council meeting or retreat, depending upon what the best venue will be. So you have the title list of the contracts that the city is currently using for our consultants. Are there any there that you would like to see the contracts on and discuss in a public meeting?
I think we need to go through each one of them. They affect the budgets and yeah, it affects what the city's doing. So yeah, I think we should be going down through them one at a time and taking a look at each of the contracts personally.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I would agree with that because there's some of them I don't know what they do.
Okay.
I'm on board as well.
So, okay, so it sounds like the council would like to review each one of those contracts. So yeah, we'll have to get that scheduled for a future meeting. And yeah, I think that might be something we'll have to do in a work session and maybe even on a Saturday because there's quite a few contracts there. So we'll take a look at that and get that prepared and bring it forward.
Can I make a suggestion that we start with Janice Corbin's contract?
Why do you want to start with that contract?
It's just the one that I'm most curious about.
And what is it that you're the most curious about? I mean, why is it different than the other contracts?
I think it's just important just so that we can, that's one that I think is kind of an issue within the city right now. And that it would be something to see where if some of these positions can be replaced with full-time employees, I mean, that's kind of, I know there's a lot that goes into that, but I think we, need to look at everything. And this is just becomes something that I keep hearing throughout the city that is an issue, and I think we need to look at it.
Okay, so you've had conversations with members of the community. Have you talked to other council members about that contract specifically?
I have not, but it's been brought to my attention by people throughout the community.
Okay. All right. Is there any other contracts that the council would like to prioritize? Again, I think we're going to do them all at once, so I don't know.
Really, I just think we should be going through them one at a time. Each one right down there through your list.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we'll get that prepared and we'll bring that forward. I just want to make sure I covered all my issues. Topics. Yep. So next thing on the agenda is the attorney's report. City Attorney.
This coming Friday, we have yet another hearing on the Riverside Estates receivership. Hopefully this will be the last hearing on the motion to sell the Phase 4 park property and certain tracts within the subdivision that have water and sewer and stormwater infrastructure on them to the city, free and clear of any liens imposed on them by contractors. So last meeting I reported that our hearing that we did have was continued, but everything has now been submitted to the judge in writing. We'll have arguments to the judge on Friday, and I expect the judge will make a ruling on Friday. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for the city attorney this evening? Okay, very good. Thanks again, Bronson. I do have one more thing that I would like to mention to the council. I apologize. I just overlooked this, but I do want to inform the council that the city has gone through the process to hire a new public works director. Brian Cast is going to be the new public works director for the city of La Center. Brian is a licensed engineer and has worked for the city of Ridgefield for the past 9 years as the public works director. Brian's first day with La Center will be March 3rd. And he will also be in attendance at the next city council meeting on February 23rd. And we'll get a chance to, I'll get a chance to introduce him at that time. And I'm really excited about bringing Mr. Cast on board. He's bringing a wealth of experience and knowledge. And I would just want to thank Janice Corbin for all her hard work on this, as well as city staff. This is going to be will be a great addition to the La Center team. So I want to thank you, Janice, for getting this done so quickly and working through it. And yeah, and city staff as well. Maria was also had a lot to do with this, and great job. So next on the agenda are council member comments. Councilmember Fox.
I don't have much. I just want to say I'm eager to meet Brian. I'm excited to have a new person on our team. Get some good, good for the city to be able to hire and fill that position right away. So that's actually impressive. Also, I just want to say, I think with some of those public comments, I think that some of what those folks are really coming at, it sounds like people are still struggling with their trust around the city and their whole position with our police force and really what they're doing. It's just been a really slow process and not a lot has changed and time just keeps ticking on. So I think some of it's a lot of trust, and I hope that we as new council, we can come together to make good decisions and do what's best to bring some of that trust back, as we're dealing with lots of variables as we do that. So I look forward to doing that as a team and trying to pick what's best for us as a community. So thank you.
So do you think there's a loss of trust with the city? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
No, I think trust in just in regards to specifically, I mean, yeah, there's a loss of trust, but specifically with, I mean, they are concerned about their safety and security. That's number one. So, I mean, I think it's been almost in the last 2 years, we've watched our police force dwindle down. And now we're just covered with, you know, XYZ variables that, you know, it's just the same old. And we're only presented with, you know, one desire of solution when that's not necessarily what's mostly best for us. So I think that, yeah, there's a lack of trust when we're losing police officers left and right due to poor leadership, in my opinion. So yeah, I'd hope that we can shift that.
So you think the issue is poor leadership with the city? And that's why we're in the situation we are with the police department?
I think there's been some pivotal decisions that have been made that haven't been in the best interest looking forward. Yes.
Which decisions are those, Councilmember Fox? Which decisions have been?
Well, I'm not going to get into specifics. I'm just going to say that it just sounds like, from what I've heard from the community and through, you know, the issues with the police force, that, you know, it's the security of the officers and their own employment and their own connection to their city that makes them want to be here. So we need to create security for them as well.
So because the city didn't create security for the officers, that's why they have left? I'm trying to understand what you're saying so we can address it. I mean,
I'm just talking about their future employment, their security in their position here, and their chance to make a home here and to create a life and have future employment here. Yeah.
Okay. So you are aware that the city has been going through a very deliberative process since early last year. I mean, we've had many council meetings, many work sessions. Chief Richardson's proposed many different options for the city. We've worked diligently with the Clark County Sheriff's Office. I mean, this process has been going on. You know, one of the reasons last November, when the previous city council members were all pretty much in agreement that the CCSO would have been the best option, one of the reasons it did not really advance in November was in recognition of the election that took place in November. And so we're really basically, you know, going through the same process over again. It's not really that the city, I don't know why you say the loss of trust. And again, the city's been working on this, I think, for the past year, discussing many different issues. And I'm just a little perplexed why you would say there's a loss of trust. I think the city's been very transparent. It's all been disclosed in public meetings. But again, we will continue to work with the new council members to bring those options forward again and to, like you say, hopefully make the best decision for the city in the long run. We appreciate your comments. Any other thing, Councilmember Fox, that you'd like to mention?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Kasberg.
There's the button. I couldn't find it. I don't have a whole lot to add tonight. I did get a couple of emails in my city email inbox that I believe maybe some of the other council members got. One was from Peter Rosenkrantz from the school district, the superintendent, and another one was from Clark County Animal Control. I just wanted to ask if those emails had been addressed at the city level, based on all of the discussion tonight, you know, there's times where the council members are getting asked either in person or over email questions that are not necessarily their role to answer. And in both of the cases, I've referred them back to the city. So I guess my question is are those two emails being answered and dealt with so that we don't have to respond to them?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, absolutely. They've been both addressed and are being dealt with. The one from the school superintendent, that's been ongoing for some time. There's basically 3 issues there that the city is working through with the school district, and it's nothing new. It's something that's we've been working through for quite a while, and we'll continue to work and bring that to a conclusion. As far as the one from, I believe it was Joanne Cloud from the animal control. Yes, that's been addressed as well. I have a phone call into her. She hasn't returned my call yet, but the city staff has also sent emails, and she has responded to those emails. And correct me if I'm wrong with this, Maria, but I think the email that you received that there are currently no issues with the city of La Center when it comes to animal control. Does that pretty much reflect what email you got?
That is correct. It's all been dealt with.
Very good. So I
Thank you very much. I have a meeting with her tomorrow unrelated to City of La Center business, and so I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have to steer her away from that topic.
Yeah, no, I don't think you need to steer away from it. I mean, it is an issue for the city with animal control. There's 2 ways to deal with it, you know, one through law enforcement, the other is through code enforcement. When Chief Richards and I talked about that earlier, he made a very good suggestion that, you know, we look at the feasibility of addressing that through our code enforcement regulations. As you all know, we've been without a public works director since this came up. It would really fall under the purview of that department, and it was pretty hard to move forward with that right now until Mr. Cass starts, and again, it'll happen in March. So, you know, this is something that the city definitely needs to address. It's not a new problem, but we are definitely addressing it. And in the interim, we'll do the best we can to service the city's citizens the best we can. So I appreciate you bringing that forward, Councilmember Kasberg, and I would hope that you don't have any issues with your meeting tomorrow.
I don't think that I will. But moving that under public works would be something I would definitely support. So I would encourage the.
Let's wait and see what you know, where we go with that. But yeah, I too think that would be a good option for the city. But you know, again, we really haven't explored it in any depth. That's probably a little premature for me to say that. But anyway, that's one of the options that we're going to have to explore. Okay. Any other comments, Councilmember Kasberg?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Boyle.
Hi, Mayor. I don't really have a whole lot. I mean, Casey kind of hit on the school district thing and the animal control. I was involved or with some of those emails. I'd not responded or anything, but they just received them. I did have, there is like a citizen, well, I guess not a citizen of the city, but there's a student attends the Center High School, and I guess that lower parking lot has seen quite a bit of theft, and there's a little bit of lawlessness going on in there. And I was just wondering if the city has been made aware of that, or if they are planning to take any action. I'm not, is that the city's parking lot? Or I don't believe it belongs to the school district, but have you heard anything about that?
Yes, I have. I'm going to meet with one of the parents whose child's car was broken into last Friday, tomorrow morning at 8:30. You know, the police department has been involved. We did respond to the incident. Chief, I think I'm going to let you talk about or address the response that the city provided the day of the incidents, and And I just want to assure Councilmember Boyle that I have talked with the parents. To answer your question, yes, that parking lot, the lower parking lot, is city property. So the high school students are able to use that parking lot. Hopefully that answers that question, and we are addressing it. And Chief, if you have anything to add, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, Mayor, thank you. Yes, we did have two thefts from vehicle in that parking lot, both in the morning. I believe it was last Friday morning, where they smashed the windows out of the car to get into the car. So that is unusual. There were two there, and I believe there was another one over in Cedar Avenue. And so we did respond and take the 3 reports. We had a sheriff's deputy that was working overtime in the city of La Center that day. And so the deputy went over there and took all 3 reports. I believe we did have Chris Olson, Sergeant Olson, do some background checks. And I don't think we've had a theft in there since, I think, October sometime maybe. So it's not, so the primary concern obviously from the parents is, hey, these 2 cars got broken into and the windows were smashed out. And there's nobody really policing the parking lot over there. And I'll address that in just a second. And then the other issue, and my mind just went blank, but I'll think about it in a second. But anyway, so we took the reports. One of their concerns was that, and I don't know where this came from, but it's something historically that's been in place informally for years, is that during the day, when that parking lot is used by the students, the police department was under the impression that the school would patrol the parking lot. And so what I did is I made sure I talked to the Officer Crutcher and Sergeant Olson, sent them an email and said, hey, during the daytime, we don't, in between calls, you need to patrol any of the parking lots in the city that have a large concentration of cars. And that includes all the school parking lots. We just can't push that responsibility on the schools, and also the card room parking lots, because we did have 2 catalytic converter thefts in January in those 2 parking lots. So we're going to increase our patrols there in the parking lot. And we did have a discussion, and I'm going to send information to the mayor on a vendor where we can put the problem with that parking lot is the camera that's there is focused more on the skate park, and it's an old analog camera, and it's one of those cameras that's so bad that you could never identify anybody off of it. So I was going to recommend a vendor that we put up some cameras. We'll see what they cost and where we find the funding. We obviously would have to come back to council and see if we can put some cameras in that parking lot, so at least we can record when people are breaking into the cars and try to get good cameras so we can get a good suspect description and even vehicle license plate, hopefully. And with that being said, we might also want to reach out to the school district and see if they would like to maybe do some kind of cost sharing on those cameras, since it's our parking lot, but it's predominantly their students. They're parking there in the daytime. So I'd be more than happy to answer any other questions regarding that.
Thank you, Chief. I think that sounds like a great plan to kind of get the ball rolling and, just kind of protect people's property. And
Absolutely.
I like the idea of getting the cameras going in there too. That sounds good.
Thank you.
Well, and it's also kids that are going down there to smoke dope and drink, and they're hanging out and partying. So
Right. And that's the other, now that you reminded me, that was the other issue that they were complaining about. And you're right. That's ongoing.
So we just had an ambulance there a couple weeks back.
You just had what?
The fire department was there because of that high school girl who passed out at that parking lot.
Right. And she had I'm not going to go into her history, but we know based on the blood results, that some of that was probably consumed somewhere else. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Any other questions for the Chief on this subject? I know those emails went out, so yeah, the city's addressing it, and like I say, I'll be meeting with one of the parents tomorrow.
And I also called both parents, so I got them up to speed on what we were working on.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Strobehn.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would like to remind parents and such that the Little League evaluations are this Saturday. So get your kids signed up and come on down to the elementary school gym and let's get them on a team. Nobody cuts any players, so everybody that signs up is going to play. And if you have free time on weekends through the next 3 months or so, starting in March, come on down to the fields and watch some baseball games. They're actually very entertaining. That's all I have tonight. Thanks, Mayor.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Cerveny.
I don't have anything to add that hasn't already been discussed. I would like to thank all the participation again this evening, and the continuing dialogue, and also extend our thanks to the staff for their role in a smooth move into the new facility. I know it adds to the workload, but greatly appreciated. So thank you there.
Thank you, Councilmember Cerveny. Okay, next on the agenda are staff reports. We do have 2 staff reports this evening, and the first one will be presented by Mr. Jeff Swanson for Community Development. Jeff?
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. If we put up the map, I'll walk through the project updates for this month, and then I'll take any questions. I am participating from Olympia with you up here for an AWC event and a little bit of lobbying. So I have not very good bandwidth, so I'm not going to turn my camera on up here. So the first project update is for project number 9, and this is the Highland Terrace subdivision. And the property owner has submitted the phase 1 plat for final review. And Department of Ecology has fined the contractor for violations of the construction stormwater permit, which is regulated through their office. The third item on that is that a post-decision review for intersection improvements was submitted on January 6th. The next project is Riverside Estates, that's number 12. And the update on this one is the contractor has begun grading of the access road and widening on Pacific Highway and storm drain construction per the approved plans. And actually, I think I have some others here, but bear with me just a second. See if I can get the right file up here in front of me. Okay. The next one is number 13, which is Stevens Hillside. This one came in for a revised plat plan and received technically, we're trying to get technically complete approval. And so we issued incompleteness in December. They provided an updated submittal related to that towards the end of January 21st. And then we've got number 21, which is Tappanee Carlson Commercial. Tappanee has submitted a formal temporary use permit. They submitted that on January 18th. And another project here, number 22, which is La Center Heights. We held a pre-application meeting for that project on January 6th, and we distributed the pre-application conference notes to the applicant on January 20th. Number 23, this is a new project, and this is Clark Public Utilities flow station. And they submitted pre-application materials on January 14th, and the city conducted a pre-application conference with them on January 25th. Number 24 is a new project. This is Aces View subdivision, and we held a pre-application conference with them for a new 69 lot subdivision. Number 25 is La Center High School Green Shed. And this one had a pre-application. They submitted pre-app materials on the 25th of January, and the pre-application conference was held yesterday, the 8th of February. And this is for a green shed project. It's kind of a cool one. They've got some grant funds and a lot of student involvement in the design of that project. So any questions, council?
Hey, Jeff, I was just wondering, is there anything going on with the stadium project at the school? Are they still going forth with that, or what's the status of that? Do you know?
This is one of the things we're working through with the school district. The project is a multi-phase project. It's broken into a whole bunch of different phases. The permits were issued for that, I think several years ago, excuse me. And you know, typically when you get a building permit, it's like buying a gallon of milk. There's an expiration date on it. So, you know, if you get a building permit in 1980 and then decide in 2020 that you want to build something under that permit, chances are, you know, development standards have changed and building practices have changed, building code's been updated. So that's why those things have expiration dates on them. And I believe in the case of the stadium project, the permits have expired, and so they need to resubmit for a renewed permit on that. I'm working with the building official to get some additional information, and it was topic of conversation between myself, Mayor Thornton, and Peter Rosenkrantz and Craig Whitehead from the school board here recently. So one of the issues we're working on with the school district.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I had one real quick.
Oh, sure.
There was, it's been several weeks ago now, there was well, basically we went to an outside attorney to get interpretation on temporary building of the code. Did that get resolved, and has that project moved forward, or is that
Oh, yes. So I think I know which one you're referring to. This was related to the Tappanee project up on the Carlson property. And yeah, so essentially the process we're going to follow there is we're going to do some updates to our temporary use permitting code. It needs some clarifying in some areas. And so Ethan Spoo is working on that. That is a planning commission action that will then come to council once planning commission has developed a recommendation. In the meantime, Tappanee has submitted for a temporary use permit up at that site, and that would be good for approximately a year, I believe, with extensions.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, hearing none other questions, turn it back to you, Mayor Thornton. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. So no other questions from the council this evening for Mr. Swanson. Okay, we'll move on. The next staff report is Public Works staff report, and city engineer this evening and Assistant Public Works Director Tony Cooper will be presenting. Tony?
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I'm going to start with the Public Works operation part of the report, and under streets and facilities, the Public Works continues to work on keeping city properties maintained and drainage systems clear throughout the city. The Public Works crew is continuously monitoring and repairing potholes throughout the city, along with other road hazards. The Public Works will be performing an annual maintenance on all the vehicles and equipment. The staff assisted in the move to City Hall and is working on many additional details that will be taken care of, including installing equipment and repurposing the old city council room for city records. Under the Parks and Grounds part of it, Public Works staff installed a new bench in front of the tennis courts at Holly Park. The bench is in honor of Joan Wolverton's 80th birthday and was donated by her husband Link and her two sons Tom and James. They said it would be Grandma Joan's throne from all the children she's grown. Joan was an avid tennis player when she was younger. The dry weather in January allowed the Public Works crew to mow all the parks, and fresh playground chips have been added to the playgrounds. So the work is complete at the new City Hall building, the work by the contractor. However, the contractor is going to install what's called a talkaphone in the next week or so, and this is an emergency phone that's going to be outside City Hall, and that was in part of the design. It took a while to get the phone, so the contractor is going to install that. And so the Public Works staff started working on the surrounding landscape. The front of the building is they're cleaning, and the remainder of the landscaping will follow in the spring. The battleground work crews are assisting on a limited basis, and then pruning and weed control are ongoing. On the personnel side, Public Works lead Aaron Wilkinson recently was recertified as a CPSI, which is a certified playground safety inspector. Certification is run by the National Recreation and Park Association and requires testing every 3 years. Currently, all city staff are working on normal shifts, and all appropriate safety precautions are being followed. Under the wastewater operations, all plant parameters remain well within compliance of the NPDES permit limits. The plant membranes were cleaned on January 13th, and that's the third basin membranes. And on January 27th, the membrane of basin 2. The plant continues to perform during high flow rain events. On the maintenance side, routine prevention maintenance is ongoing. Under the administrative side, the January 2022 DMR data is being compiled for submission to the Department of Ecology. Staff is currently working on regular shifts, but maintaining social distancing practices. For the project side, the Scada Upgrade project is well underway. The system has been installed along with one workstation for testing and debugging. The remaining workstation will be installed soon, and we'll begin using the system in parallel with the old Scada so that they can go through the debugging process of the new system. Staff are currently working on the Kubota membrane incorporated delivery and installation of the replacement membranes this summer. And I just might add, that's the approval the council gave last council meeting to purchase those membranes. On the building department side, permitting and construction is still progressing, but we have noticed a continual seasonal slowing. Staff is conducting on an average 10 to 12 stops per day, resulting in 20 to 35 inspections. And staff has taken in 14 building permits so far in 2022. The new middle school has achieved temporary occupancy. The building official continues to work with Center School District to achieve final occupancy as soon as possible. Teresa's Little School has been granted a third temporary occupancy for 90 days, set to end in April. The building official continues to work with Gentile Investments to achieve final occupancy. And on the stormwater side, the street sweeper continues to run throughout the town as time permits, and staff are cleaning roadside ditches and culverts and the stormwater system. That's all I have for tonight. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, not hearing any questions, Tony. I just want to say thank you for the report. Good job. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Mayor, 1 second. I just wanted to tell Tony thank you as well. And thank you for continuing to keep the streets nice and clean. It's nice to see the street sweeper out there running.
Thanks. I'll pass that along to our operations crew.
Congratulations to Aaron once again for the renewal on a certification.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Any other questions or comments, Council? Okay, thanks again, Tony. So next on the agenda is Ordinance 2022-01, updating the Center Municipal Code 18.60, the development agreements. This is a continuance from the last City Council meeting. This was presented by Contract City Planner, Mr. Ethan Spoo, and again, the council had to have a little bit more time before they move forward on this. So there was a continuance. The public hearing was left open. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to Ethan, and Ethan can answer any questions or comments that the city council members have. And then Bronson, I do need to open it back up or to have the public portion of it again this evening if anybody wants to comment.
The meeting was left open, so public comment you can still receive tonight.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so I'll turn it over to you, Ethan. Thank you.
All right, good evening, council. As the mayor mentioned, this is a continuation of a public hearing item from your January 26th meeting. The council chose to leave the public hearing open to allow for additional public review and comments on this item. The agenda packet that you have before you tonight is exactly the same as the packet at your January 26th meeting. I think it's beneficial probably for us just to review really quickly some of the points that were made at that January 26th meeting. Staff and the Planning Commission are both recommending to you an update to the city's development agreement code, which is chapter 1860 of the municipal code. And the basic purpose of that update is to better define what modifications are allowed to the city code under development agreements, and to define what public benefits developers would have to provide to the city and the community in return for entering into the development agreement. Just as a refresher, a development agreement is a type of agreement that combines the city's contract and land use authority. It's a voluntary agreement that a developer or a property owner enters into to better define certain aspects of their development, such as phasing, timing of when public improvements are provided, and perhaps other features of the development, such as design of the development and common elements, such as parks. Developers or property owners get a couple of things, a couple of main benefits out of a development agreement. One is just certainty in the development regulations that will apply to their property over time. So if they have a large development that takes a long time to build out, they're able to vest in certain regulations and have those same regulations apply to them throughout the term of the development agreement. And then secondly, they get flexibility to modify certain code standards, which allows them perhaps to provide a product that meets their needs and meets their market. And then the city gets a few things out of it as well. The city also gets the benefit of having a certain set of development regulations apply to the development. So staff is consistently reviewing a development against the same regulations. That's also a benefit to the city and to the community. And then finally, the city and the community get the public benefit that the developer proposes, such as an additional, could be public infrastructure or park or something like that, that the city might not otherwise get if it didn't enter into a development agreement. Just to kind of summarize it all real quickly here, I mean, development agreements are voluntary. They're entered into by the choice of the developer, the property owner, and the city. The code that you have in front of you tonight, if it's approved, it would not affect any existing agreements in place. Those agreements would remain unaffected and until they expire. But if a new code is adopted, then any new development agreements that come before the city would be reviewed against the new adopted code. So again, our recommendation for you is to adopt the changes to 1860. There is in your agenda packet at the end of the staff report a recommended motion there for you. And so with that, I'll close and ask if you have any questions. Thank you.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You keep mentioning, you know, the benefits of the city, and you keep mentioning parks. I mean, La Center is small. We can only have so many parks. So my question is this a deterrent for developers to come in and strike a deal with us because you're also asking for something in return that, I mean, what else besides parks are they able, or what you're going to be asking from them in order to develop here?
Yeah, I mean, so parks are just one example of something that they might propose.
Yeah, but we don't really need that many more parks. I mean, so you keep saying parks. What else is part of that? I mean, realistically, we're talking about up on the I-5 junction. We're not going to have parks up there. That just doesn't make sense. So what else are you referring to?
Well, so if you take a look at the code, there's a number of things the proposed code calls out that are examples of public benefits that the developer could enter into. So it's not just parks and open spaces, but trails and trail connections, public streets with additional amenities in them, you know, perhaps wider sidewalks or more landscaping within the public right-of-way, or some other capital facility that's called out in the city's capital facilities plan that the developer could offer to build or build a portion of. So it's not just limited to parks. You know, there could be a huge variety of things possible. It could also be not just public infrastructure, but they could provide a higher level of design within their subdivision or residential development, for instance, buildings with more detail, architectural detail on them. So those would be a couple more examples for you.
Are those stipulations you're putting on them in order to okay their development?
Well, so I guess I'd like to emphasize again that these are voluntary agreements. So a developer would approach the city and say, I want to enter into a development agreement. I want to be vested against the regulations that are in place today. I want flexibility, perhaps, you know, in A, B, and C. And for that, I'm going to offer you know, these other public amenities for it. And so if they voluntarily enter into the agreement, then that gets worked out and negotiated with the city to determine what specific public benefits they would propose, and then that agreement would come before City Council to approve.
Okay. All right, thank you. And where does the sewer pumps and everything that they need for that type of development, where does that lie in this type of plan? Like whose responsibility is that, or is that just left up in the air?
No, that's a good question. I mean, standard public infrastructure such as streets and sewer and water lines are part of the city's public works standards that are implemented with pretty much any development. And so anytime, for instance, a residential developer applies for land use permits or for subdivision approval, then they're required to submit a plan for their public utilities and how each lot and home would be served by public utilities. So before the city can approve a subdivision application, it makes sure that those public facilities will be provided.
So it's the city's job to provide that, or if they put in a claim and say, I want to put in a development and there's no sewer line, and then the city says, well, in order to develop there, you need to put in a sewer line, so you need to pay for it. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep. Those costs are usually
so
always
it's our job to provide that, but yet you're asking them to foot the entire bill. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Well, no. So, I mean, part of this gets back to, you know, what could be sort of a long-winded discussion about Washington growth management law and something that's called concurrency. And concurrency is the idea that development is required to pay for itself. You know, and that goes back to the 1990s in Washington. Yeah, that cost is on developers who propose subdivisions because they're the ones creating the impact.
Sure. So there's no like support plan in that with the city. There's no like partial, like we fork some and they do some. It's they have to pay 100% in order to develop or not. So we could be sitting with waiting around for somebody who's willing to fork over all that. Is that typical in cities, or is it sometimes partially paid by the city and partially paid by the developer?
Yeah, I think Bronson wants to jump in here, so I'll let him.
Yeah, so if you have a hypothetical developer who wants to put in a subdivision, they have to show that adequate provision is made for your typical utilities, water, sewer, stormwater, things like that. So in your question, Councilmember Fox, developer X wants to put in a subdivision and he has to extend a sewer line out to the subdivision in order to provide sewer service there. That can be expensive. There is a mechanism for sharing that cost, not directly with the city, but if there's other development proposals that come along that would connect into that line, the city can enter into a latecomer agreement with the developer, and through that agreement, other people who would then connect into the sewer line would pay a proportionate share of the cost to extend the sewer line. So yes, if you want to develop a subdivision, you have to show that there's adequate provision for sewer. And if that cost, you know, if that sewer benefits other developers, they can share in that cost.
Okay, thank you. I was mostly thinking about the I-5 junction and hotels and retail strip malls and big developers, not like that, not necessarily housing developments. I'm thinking of the developers that we need in order to increase revenue and in order to, you know, bring the businesses in. Where are we sitting with that? So that's where, yeah, subdivisions are great and property taxes are great, but so are sales tax. So we need to increase commercial businesses. So
the same answer applies to a commercial development as to my example in the subdivision.
Right, I see what you're saying. Yeah, thank you for the answer.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Bronson. Council, again, are there any other questions for city staff or any discussion between yourselves before I open? I'm not going to open the public hearing, but we've continued the public hearing and I'll allow for any public comment on this subject.
I just want to comment real quick that my computer is dying, so I'm going to be calling in. My cord is at my office, so I can't charge it. So I'm going to be calling in on my phone. So please excuse that I'll be leaving.
Okay. Okay, so there's no other questions or comments. So at 8:03, I will continue the public comment. If there's anyone in attendance this evening that would like to make a public comment regarding this ordinance, now would be the time to do that. If you could please state your name and address, limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Curtis R. Carlson, 35915 Northwest Jenny Creek Road, La Center. Am I allowed to double dip, Mr. Mayor?
I don't know what you mean by double dipping, Skip.
Well, I double dipped, or I already dipped 2 weeks ago, so.
Yeah. Feel free.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. First things first, I want to thank Mr. Spoo. He was very timely in returning a phone call to me, and I really appreciate a return phone call. The comment I'm going to make is because I'm talking about specifically about the Carlson properties, the Carlson et al. Properties up there around the junction, and our current existing pre-annexation development agreement. This one goes into dives a lot deeper, and I would a lot deeper into the ingredients of, and it seems to narrow the focus. I'd like council to consider extending the development agreement that exists with our properties up there in order to avoid a narrowness of this particular piece of legislation. So, and I don't know, and Mr. Potter would undoubtedly have the answer to this, if that's something that could be done simply with a council motion second and a vote, and that's pretty much what I got to say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to respond to that. First of all, as Ethan pointed out, the code amendment that's being proposed tonight has no effect on the existing development agreement with the Carlsons. So this would have no impact on that existing agreement. To the question of extending the existing development agreement, that would have to occur through a separate hearing with notice and proposed language exactly as to what the proposed extension is. So it's not an action that could be taken tonight. Does that answer your question, sir?
Somewhat. I'm not a legal mind, so I don't know. But isn't it simply an extension of a current contract?
So under state law, there has to be a public hearing on any entering into a development agreement or amending a development agreement, and you have to give notice of that hearing. So that's not something that could be done tonight.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Potter.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Any other guests that would like to comment or have any questions regarding the ordinance that's in front of us this evening. Okay, not hearing any at 8:08, I will close the public hearing and turn it back over to the city council for any additional questions or comments, questions for the staff, or any discussion that the council would like to have amongst themselves regarding this ordinance.
I just want to say that I'm having trouble calling in and my computer might die at any time. So if anybody has any assistance, let me know.
I'll message you, Councilmember Fox.
I'm not seeing a problem with the code as it's written here. I understand Skip's concerns. And I'm sure there's more concerns from other landowners as well. This gives you such a long time to develop. And I really think that a lot of the land up there is going to be developed before the next 6-7 years. You know, so I don't see any issue in going forward with this ordinance.
Okay, any other discussion, council?
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance 2022-01, amending chapter 18.60 of the Center Municipal Code Development Agreements to require a reciprocal public benefit as part of a development agreement and further specify which development regulations can be modified and define submittal requirements.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 2022-01, amending chapter 18.60 of the Center Municipal Code Development Agreements. This is an ordinance, so I'd like to get a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Kasberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyle,
Yes.
Councilmember Strobehn,
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny,
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted and the vote was unanimous in favor of adopting the ordinance. Again, I'd like to thank you, Ethan, Bronson, city staff, and also council for acting on this evening. So with that, that concludes our city council meeting for this evening. It's right now 8:11 p.m. So if there's no other business, could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of the evening.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.